This is Welcome Home Radio from the Fresno Association of Realtors on 940 ESPN.
Well, good morning and welcome to Welcome Home Radio. I almost said Welcome Home Real Estate. Well, that's because that's what we do here, real estate. And I'm Don Scordino. I'm your host on our Valley's most informative real estate talk show. This hour is being brought to you by the Fresno Association of Realtors. And we just want to give our listeners the real facts, the real stats, let you know what's really happening right here in our local market. Just like the weather, it might be humid back in New Jersey, hot and humid. Out here in our local market, it's just hot. So anyway, the beauty of our show, I really believe, is that we have 4,000 members, plus affiliates, plus our contacts with elected officials, with providers of maybe well drilling, termite inspections and such. So we have somebody different to bring every week on the show in different experiences. And so I'm really happy to tell you that today we have melkleinveldtlewis. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Scordino.
Thank you. And you know, for the rest of the show, it's got to be Don. It can't be Mr. Scordino. It makes me sound old, and I'm still young.
Yes, you are, sir. Absolutely.
Not according to my driver's license, but and I've probably had a driver's license more years than some people have even been here on the planet Earth.
I can see that. Yes.
Oh. All right. Mel is a newer real estate agent. Is that right? How long you been
just
licensed?
Months. Yeah, no, I haven't even really got it to my half a year yet, so I'm brand new to this thing.
Okay.
Yes.
And you work at Realty Concepts.
I do.
And that's how I kind of ran across you. And you gave me an excellent compliment. You asked if you could take a few minutes to pick my brain.
Yes.
And I thought, well, there's not much left there to pick, but we'll give it a try.
Right, and apparently according to the driver's license, right?
Yeah. All right, thank you. But anyway, come to find out, you just graduated with a degree in communications.
Yes, I did. That's the passion, communications.
All right. And that got us to talking that, man, communication is a key in real estate. Absolutely. That is how we serve our clients.
Absolutely.
How would we know without effective communication, and I think effective is a key word there, without effective communication, how do we know the needs, the wants, and the fears of our clients? Oh, so let's talk about the fears.
Yes, early in the morning.
Yeah. So is buying a $250,000 home fearful?
Not if you have the money for a $250,000 home, then there shouldn't be any fear. But again, as like we said, the effective communication of it, whether it's that $250,000 home or a $100,000 home, it should be the same level of communication and comfort.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the different ways that we can pick up on communication? Is it just words?
No, absolutely not. Words are to me, a very small part of the actual effectiveness of communication. Typically, I'm not the type of person that talks much, actually. For communication to be something that I'm so passionate about, I think that the biggest part of it is listening, is understanding, more so than just the words we use.
Okay, I like how you make that distinction between listening and understanding.
Absolutely.
So just because you heard the words doesn't necessarily mean you understand them.
Absolutely.
All right, so how does the listener effectively understand even though they heard the words?
Yes. So again, this is just things that I do personally. When I'm observing things and not talking, for the most part, I am not just listening to, again, the words that are being spoken. You're looking at body language, you're hearing tone, and then the specific words, that are being said. That's very important as well. However, as far as the listening aspect of it, you really have to take in everything. You have to be willing to take in all the information and then process that through critical thinking, of course, and I'm sure there's going to be some emotion that's attached to some of the things that you hear, and especially in a real estate transaction, it's a pretty hefty situation happening, so the emotion of it is something that you really have to be intelligent about and enjoy. And just like today, this conversation, we want to enjoy the process of it, but taking all the information and then critically breaking that down is how I feel is the most effective way to listen.
So let's talk about the visual part of communication.
Yes.
And I'm going to throw out a quirky story from my past.
Okay.
I was showing homes to some people, and I was getting frustrated because I couldn't seem to find the right one. So I tried to strike up that conversation. And it's finally the buyer, one of the buyers said, you know, the walls aren't talking to us. And I thought, that's crazy. You know, I mean, but the more I thought about it, yeah, that meant a lot. So I started watching them as they went through the house rather than listening to them.
There it is.
Yeah, and we got into this one house, and I noticed that the knees started to buckle, they sped up, there was an excitement.
Yes.
Subtle, but there was an excitement. I go, the walls are talking.
Absolutely.
So after they went through the home, one of them said, now this one's talking to us. So I was able to pick up visually what they were trying to tell me.
Yes.
The words weren't there.
And most of the time they aren't. Most of the times we use the wrong words. But I like that. I like the fact that, you know, you took that step back as the agent and to just really see what it is that they're feeling more so than what they're saying.
Because this really is an emotional buy.
Absolutely.
Although, okay, I have to throw this in there. You got to put some logic into it too.
And that's that critical thinking aspect of it.
There you go. That's a better word. Critical thinking. Yeah. So, and maybe as the realtor, we can help our client balance that logic and the emotion.
And that's where effective communication is key, because those two things together, coming together and really, and for me, that's what I say. When I say critical thinking, I say you taking in everything, but you absolutely acknowledging those emotions. You want to make sure that you understand that. And then, and you and I have had that conversation about emotional intelligence even. So that's something that absolutely is important, blending those two together, yes.
I remember that conversation, and made me feel good because it reminded me of my mother. She was the most emotionally intelligent person you could ever imagine. You know, she didn't get past 3rd grade. She was raised during the Depression and during World War II back in Italy. So that opportunity wasn't there for her. But boy, you put her in a room with 30 people, she could pick out that person that wasn't comfortable and had a way of making them comfortable.
There it is.
So
Intelligence.
emotional intelligence.
Yes.
I like that. Then the other part is common sense. Then there's academic intelligence.
Yes.
I could tell you which one is my challenge and which one is I think it's the latter. Anyway, but you graduated with a degree in communication. So what are some of the other factors or things that you learned from these classes you took that you can apply in everyday life?
Everyday life, again, it to me always comes down to that observation and really taking everything in, because without the willingness, really, so starting with self, starting with knowing how to communicate with yourself, and then that's where the emotional intelligence and the logical thinking comes in. That's communicating with yourself first, understanding that part. And once you can actually do that comfortably with yourself and really be honest with yourself when it comes to things like that, then communicating with others should be really a breeze, because not only are you taking in your own observation and your own feelings into account, now you can walk into that home and see, okay, this is not the home for the customer or the client, because their knees have not buckled. The walls have not spoke to them at all. So those are the type of things that I would really say that I learned a lot, and that I continue to learn, is how to effectively communicate with myself and understanding myself first in order to communicate with others.
You just made me think of another one from way back when I thought that I knew what my client was looking for, and we walked into a house, and I thought, let's get out of here. This thing is not the one. And this was my aunt too, by the way, so I should know how to communicate with her. But I noticed that she was spending a lot of time in each room, and kind of turning her head and her fingers on her chin, and she's thinking. Wouldn't you know, she bought the home and lived there for 30-some years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here, walking through there, I thought, let's get out of here. This is not the one. But she saw something that I didn't see. And of course, she was the buyer, so she knew what she wanted.
Did she say what it is that she was thinking about in all these different rooms, or?
Yeah, but I never understood her. It was my aunt. So,
Okay.
I just went along with her.
Okay, and she bought the house, so.
Yeah, and turned it into a home. She turned that house into a home. So, I mean, that's, what more can you expect?
And maybe that's what she was thinking. How do I turn this into a home?
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, after we get back from our first commercial break, I want to talk more about the other aspects of communication. We talked a little bit about the visual part, but maybe let's talk about the words and how they can have different meanings.
Yes.
All right.
Sounds
Well,
good.
with that, we're going to go to our first commercial break. So stay tuned to Welcome Home Radio, 940 ESPN.
If there's one thing Shelter in Place has done
Well, welcome back to Welcome Home Radio, where all our guests rock out after we play Earth, Wind, and Fire. Everyone, not just you, Mel, but everyone rocks out. All right, so here with me today is melkleinveldtlewis of Realty Concepts. Admittedly a newer agent, but in my humble opinion, I think gonna be a good one, if not already, because you got it right. Listening, communication is what we do for our client. In fact, let me throw out a scenario. So let's say you write an offer for a client. How you effectively communicate the needs, the wants, and the strength of your offer to the listing agent is very important.
Yes, I've absolutely heard about that as well. Just from other agents who have failed in that aspect, but those who have done very well in creating that image of the family or the buyers absolutely is something that is very important. And then that's now we're talking written communication and how that's taking effect in this process of real estate.
Written communication, something that the first half of my career we didn't do.
Yes.
I mean, unless you were carving something on the side of the cave.
Stop it.
All right, so how is that written communication done now, and how effective is it?
So we're talking about the outlets. We're talking about how it's done via computer. That's what you're referring to, or just the
let's take that scenario where you're presenting an offer to the other agent.
Absolutely. I've even seen some where people have included a picture of the family as part of the offer, and as part of that written, part of the story that you're telling about the family or the people that are wanting to buy the home. And that's something that I really find very effective, seeing that image of the client or the person that will now make this house into your home that you've had for years could be their home. So that is very important. I think positive words too. If we use a more positive outlook on the actual offer itself, I think that makes it a little more effective too. But those are just some of the things that I've seen.
Give me an example of a positive word.
A positive word, What I know, I looked at, if we are, let's say in the scenario where you're the agent to the buyer and you are taking them around, rather than telling them what the house does not have, let's look at what it does have. So, you know, this is what the home has to offer versus, you know, well, it doesn't have this one thing you're looking for, but I would rather start with, well, it has all these things. And I think that's the positive and negative spin on something like that.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get positive communication without words, but in timing. And I'll give you an example. A couple weeks ago, I was in a multiple offer situation, and my seller put out multiple offers to the different potential buyers. One buyer came back immediately without any words, but just the timing, probably within 1 hour.
Okay.
Now they had up to 3 days to respond.
Yes.
So they came back right away, said, yes, we'll do it. They signed. Another buyer, I had to call saying, are you guys going to respond? Well, they're taking their time to think about it. Mm-hmm. And so a couple of days later, finally my seller took that first one that came back within 1 hour because they wanted it. Mm-hmm. And knowing that you need desire to last a whole 45-day escrow.
Yes.
They exhibited it with their timing, not with their words.
That's fantastic. That's a great example of that positive response, if you would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's so many different ways to communicate. Of course, we got to make. I took a class one time on nonverbal communication, and they were talking about how you put your hand on your chin, or how you do this. And the guy said, but you got to be careful that they're not just scratching an itch. You might think it means this, yes, but it could be something else too. So
absolutely,
look for other signs.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the body language of communication.
Okay.
So in these classes that you took at a university or college,
yes,
what does body language have to do with it?
Certainly, quite a bit, like you mentioned, having that hand on the chin, but could potentially be scratching an itch though. So even though it absolutely makes a difference and you want to see, some people don't necessarily exhibit a lot of, action or emotion, so it will be harder to read. And that's where, again, taking in as much as possible, in addition to the body language, what are they saying? Or are they saying absolutely nothing? And now all you have is the body language. So that's, like you said, that's a tricky one. You could just be scratching an itch, and the trigger could be, well, they're not interested. They're sitting with the hand on the chin, so perhaps they're confused. Perhaps they just need a little more understanding as to what's going on. Your aunt in the house, you thought maybe she didn't like the house because she was spending a lot of time in the rooms, but not necessarily saying anything, and yet she was just thinking about how she wants to make this her home. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely something that you would have to take in stride. And the more the more you learn about your own body language and what you exhibit, then it should be a little easier to pick up on what other people are thinking without saying.
And that's interesting about the paying attention to your own body language. Sometimes in a tense situation, I will, for a client, maybe they have to make a tough decision, or I'm delivering some tough news to them, like, hey, our escrow is going to be delayed. Yeah. I think my body language of calmness means a lot.
Absolutely.
So it gets a little harder though with now that we're not as person to person, or worse yet, we now have a face mask on, and maybe can't see the expressions.
Yes.
How can we effectively communicate in today's new world?
Absolutely. So then this is where the words become a little bit more important. I always say when we're walking around, people can't see me smile anymore because no matter who it is, I'm always walking up towards somebody and there's always a smile on my face. So that's something that, yes, absolutely has been deterred. I mean, we can't really see that, but what I've found that I've been doing is just talking more now. Now I'm actually saying that out loud, you know, hey, I'm smiling, you know, and that breaks the ice a little bit. So yeah, I can see how that's a bit tougher, but now we just use our words more.
Okay, and as we use words, people have different meanings. I had a little fun on text the other day where somebody texted me that, hey, I'm down. Yes. And what they meant is that they were in. Yes. So I said, wait, I'm up. I'm up for it.
Absolutely.
I was just having fun with them. So I guess as we listen more to words, we also have to be more understanding, forgiving, accepting of the differences.
Yes. And then making an effort to understand, making an effort to want to know, well, okay, is this what you mean by you're down, or are you down on down your luck? What's going on?
Yeah.
So it's just checking for that understanding and making sure, and like I said, the willingness to want to understand what it is the other person is saying. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I typed something on my son's Facebook page, and I realized that nobody's going to understand that. That's a term from way back when I told him to keep on trucking. You know, he's doing a good job back in Florida. He's bought a car, moved to a different home, all this during the pandemic, and so he was getting some accolades there on Facebook about, you know, being able to do all this while the things are down. And I said, hey, that's him, man. Just keep on trucking.
Absolutely.
And
did he understand?
Probably not. He probably rolled his eyes and said, oh, that's another bad dad joke. Hey, dad jokes are something that never change, though.
Oh, I know. They're the best.
And you know the reason why? I'm just making this up right now. But the reason why is because with the dad joke, it's just like, you know, you're supposed to laugh, and you'll figure out the meaning of it later.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you know it was well-intentioned.
And see, that's what it is. And especially with yourself, I always look at that as well. That's something, I said, no matter how bad, air quotes, the joke is.
My quotes? My jokes?
Your jokes, right? I absolutely see the intention, yes.
All right, well, good. I think that was a compliment.
Yes, it was.
All right, so there's a lot to communication that we have, and I'm hearing that part of good, effective communication is also understanding.
Yes.
Not just the words, not just the expressing oneself, but upon the listener, it's understanding.
Yes.
After that deep thought, let's go to a commercial break. So let's stay tuned to Welcome Home Radio, 940 ESPN. Well, welcome back to Welcome Home Radio. This is Don Scordino, your host, and we are here today with melkleinveldtlewis, an agent with realtor with Realty Concepts, and also a communications expert, because not only did you learn this in school, but you were in marketing for 10 years
Yes.
Before this?
Almost 10 years, yeah. I did marketing and customer service, sales, but a good portion of it was coordinator in marketing, yeah.
All right. So how did communications play into your prior field?
You know, I think I learned more after. Well, communications, absolutely, because with marketing, and especially what I did, you know, speaking directly to customers, so we would create promotions and then test it out in certain areas, and I would have to actually get the feedback a lot of the times from what customers are feeling or thinking about these particular offers that we just created for them. So absolutely had to learn how to speak to people. I mean, I'm from another country, so I mean, even though I spoke English, there's a little bit of a different, you know, words-wise, coming from South Africa to America. This was all 15 years ago, though, so it was a while ago. However, being able to now speak to all these strangers and getting their feedback, whether it was emotional, positive, or negative, I had to learn how to take that in. We even spoke about the different personalities that you have to, you know, that you have to deal with, and that's something that definitely helped me out and made me want to explore it more.
You just made me think of something funny. When I was a kid, my mother, who was from another country,
Yes.
and in her English, she sometimes used words that didn't have the same meaning
Yes.
here in California.
Yes.
So I remember one time I took her, I was just being a brat, but I took her literally, and even though I knew it's not what she meant, and I did something, and she got so mad at me, and I got in trouble, and she said, from now on, you do what I mean, not what I say.
That's fantastic.
Well, and that was also a lesson in effective communication.
Absolutely.
So even though I heard her words,
Yes.
I knew the meaning wasn't what she said.
Yes.
But being a brat, that's what I did.
And I can see that as well. I've done that too with my own parents. My mom does it too. I mean, the words, she might throw something in, and even my husband, I'll have him, you know, read a message that my mom sent, and it might not make sense to him, but I think those are the type of things that has helped me be able to communicate on such a vast level with so many different people, because I can take that and go, okay, no, this is what she really means, and then look at that understanding rather than the words.
Here's another crazy one I got to throw out there. But I think I learned the art of nonverbal communication way back when, and back then it was okay to hitchhike. I would hitchhike across the country. I mean, now you'd be crazy to do that. Back then you were only somewhat crazy to do that. But if you think about it, you had a split second to effectively communicate to that driver that you were okay.
Yes.
And I learned not to look so raggedy. I remember one time I actually, on the road, I was back in Iowa,
Okay.
I went and got a haircut just because it's starting to take me a little longer to get rides.
Wow.
So I got the haircut, trimmed the beard up a little bit, and wouldn't you know, I'm back on the road.
Presentation.
On the road again.
Presentation, and that's something else that marketing taught me as well, is the presentation of things. It makes a very big difference. That first impression, that first thing that people see or hear, makes a very big difference in.
Okay, so presentation.
Okay.
And maybe this is one for sellers.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, this is going to be a good one now. So when that buyer drives up to the house,
Mm-hmm.
and their first impression is that curb appeal,
Yes.
everything's taken care of.
Okay.
You're communicating to this potential buyer, that the rest of it is probably well taken care of.
Absolutely.
As opposed to you pull up and the lawn hasn't been mowed for a while, the grass is brown,
Mm-hmm.
the weeds are high. What are you effectively communicating to the buyer?
Right. So then, one, you really don't care too much about this home. Perhaps you're just trying to get rid of it rather than actually looking at putting, like you said, another family into the home, rather than. So it is important. I absolutely believe presentation is important, and especially in the process of selling a home. That's why stagers are so important, I think,
Mm-hmm.
as well.
And let's say you go into that nice big backyard,
Mm-hmm.
and it's unkept, weeds are high. You're communicating to the buyer that this backyard is a project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It was beyond me. I couldn't take care of it, so
Yes.
good luck to you. I'm going to dump it on you.
Yeah.
As opposed to you go back there and it looks like a family barbecue
Yes.
about to happen.
You want to start it right away. I want this house now.
Okay. So, see, I'm learning something today. That is something that I've always coached my sellers to do that.
Yes.
But I never thought of it as a form of communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're communicating to a party who's never been in that property before,
Yes.
that this is a fun place. It's not beyond taken care of. It's not too much.
Right.
And you can have a good time here.
Yes. And I kind of like the ones that are in between. I mean, we look at homes often, and then you go, okay, that looks like a project, like you said, and that home is going to take a lot. We want to be able to move in, but you may also want to make it your own. So do you know, absolutely, yes, you want to go into a home that's ready to live in right away. But I think it's also a nice way to, as far as the buyer is concerned, to communicate, you know what, I love this home, even with a little bit of faults, because I want to make it my own. So I think that's something that you can look at as well, if that could be communicated, I guess, through the way the home looks too.
All right, let's move on to some of the new barriers in communication. So I was recently quoted in the Fresno Business Journal as saying that when shelter in place came about, it hit us like a ton of bricks.
Yes.
And it sure did me, because I was going to have to change my forms of communication now.
Yeah.
But we all have adapted,
Yes.
and I want to give it to the Central California Realtors and the Central California clients that we have resiliently adapted, and I think pretty well, because we're still trucking.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that you use that word too, resilient. I mean.
Oh, I thought you meant trucking.
Oh. See, miscommunication. No, no, the resilience of the realtors and like you said, even the clients in the area, but realtors especially, I've definitely seen how they have taken this more as a challenge to do something new, rather than, complain and worry that it's going to be a long time before we see something that looked like the way it was, prior to this. But these new forms of communications have helped, I think. Social media, Zoom has been, I think, a lifesaver to a lot of businesses.
Yeah. Welcome Home Radio, too. I
Yes.
remember the first week of shelter in place, we had a guest on here, Bo Miracle from Miracle Realty.
Okay.
And I was searching for answers at that time, too.
Yes.
How do we do this? And I loved what he said. This is a time that we have to hone our listening skills. And that one has stuck with me ever since. And I've been listening for pauses in communication. I've been listening. You gotta listen more now.
Yes.
Ears more than eyes right now.
Right. You said we can't see the face anymore, so you can't see those expressions. You can't tell. So absolutely, yes, listening.
So, by the way, that was on Welcome Home Radio that I learned that one.
Yep,
There's a
there you
little
go.
plug for the show. Huh?
Absolutely. We learned a lot from here too.
So, now that we have to show a client virtually.
Yes.
Not entirely. We can still take them out, show them homes, but it's not like the old days
more
from
constricted.
4 months ago.
Absolutely.
when you just threw them in the car and let's go look at 5 of them.
I know, right? So yes, it's definitely a bit of a different thing that we're having to deal with now. We talk about like the virtual aspect of it as well, virtual showings, I think it gives us an opportunity though, because it seems like with the selling or buying homes now, there's so many people making offers, which tells me that not only are they comfortable looking at it online first and really doing their homework there, by the time they get to the house, because now we have to be a little more prepared because there are more restrictions on actually going in, but by the time you go in, it's like the decision has already been made. You're just really putting that final stamp on it. So I think it gives us a lot of opportunity to get to that place quicker now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sets people's expectations.
Yes, that's a good one.
Now, let's explore that one. Expectations and communications.
Okay.
Maybe communications is how we manage or set expectations.
We talked about that, yeah, where if you're, again, this new way of communicating where we can send out a 20-page contract to a client, and really setting that expectation beforehand. So talking about it, sending a quick snapshot of what is to be signed, and so again, that understanding as well, but it sets the expectation prior to even signing anything. And a lot of these, like I said, to me it just feels like an opportunity to be able to do that more effectively, because you almost have to. You can't meet up with them and talk. Well, here, let's fully explore this first, and then you go ahead and I'll email it to you and sign it. So it gives us an opportunity. Yes.
I remember that conversation we had, and the example was when you send a 20-page contract to a client for digital signature,
Right.
rather than meeting them in person to sign,
Absolutely.
because it's a little safer that way now.
Yeah.
But it comes back, this 20-page document comes back in 1 minute,
Yes.
all
That's what
signed.
it's about.
Okay, that is an effective communication. That tells you they didn't read it. And you're going to have trouble during that escrow, because there's things they probably don't understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where that setting the expectation is a great way to make sure that even if they want to sign it in 1 minute, at least we discussed the main points of it prior to me just sending it to you. So, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I have to go on and say, sometimes, and most of the time, I think a good realtor will, before they send it,
Yes.
will have at least a conversation on the phone, not by text, but by phone, and discussing what the terms of that contract are. So the signature is more of a ratification than it is a first meeting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And effective communication
Yeah.
has been established.
All right. With that, we're going to go to our next commercial break, but stay tuned to Welcome Home Radio 940 ESPN on your digital dial.
Having your clothes cleaned.
Yes. I'm in America now.
Well, welcome back to Welcome Home Radio. And yeah, I see you are proud to be an American now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I became a citizen just over a year ago.
Ah, congratulations. Once again, that reminds me of my mother.
Oh.
God, this is about my mother's show today.
Oh.
But when Italy was playing the United States in the 1984 World Cup, I thought, I got her now. I said, so Mom, who you pulling for, Italy? She said, no, I'm pulling her for America, because I'm an American now.
Absolutely.
I just hope they don't beat them too bad. So, all right. And we wanted to play a little patriotic music, because next Saturday is our Independence Day, 4th of July, and we're in that season. So, let's get back to communication and how it is so critical, and how it is so changed the last 4 months.
Yes.
Let's go to, it's because you can't, it's not advised to meet face-to-face quite so often, although real estate is considered an essential service where we can,
Yes.
if you follow certain guidelines. So with those guidelines, it does make for more non-in-person meetings, more text messages. How effective is texting in the real estate transaction?
I believe it's still an effective part of communication, just because it's a quick and easy way to send a message. But I think, like everything else, it has to come down to making sure that there's an understanding. So as quick and easy as it could be to just send a few words, it also has to be clear. It has to be professional. I mean, if it's coming from the realtor, whether it's to the client or another agent, I think that being professional helps with creating that understanding, because you're not just sending out a bunch of emojis. So it's still very, very important in the process of communication. However, it has to be very clear and respectful and professional.
The invention and introduction of emojis has made text communication much better for me.
Okay.
Because I have a little twinge of sarcasm in my comments and jokes. So now I can always put a smiley face afterwards or something,
Absolutely.
so people know, all right, lighthearted.
And I like that, because what you did was you put a clear understanding or communication as to what the words mean. Well, there's an emoji that at least gives us a little more direction. So yes, clear understanding and clear words that have been placed before it with an emoji behind it. Absolutely, that's okay to me.
However, when texting has its time, its place,
Yes.
for shorter, intricate
Absolutely.
communication.
Yes.
I remember a time when somebody was asking me for real estate advice, a client, I know him well, and I gave my help to them by text. She works for the court system, so she wasn't able to make calls during the day.
Okay.
Turned out I was giving her advice on the wrong house.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. They own several properties,
Okay.
and for some reason I thought she meant one, but it was another one she was actually asking about.
And you know, I'm okay with actually double checking. That's a good word for something like this. Just to make sure, okay, this is what we're talking about, right? Before and I think I've even done this with you. You know, just sending a message like, okay, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. Just to make sure, even if it sounds a little bit annoying to ask it again, I think it's important to really check for that understanding.
Mm-hmm. So, how about texting a message to your agent saying, I don't understand item 14B on the contract?
Okay.
Now, if the agent texts back a response, that seems cumbersome to explain a legal paragraph.
Yes.
So, was that a time where you say, let's talk?
Yeah, perhaps some details. I mean, perhaps you can add in, you know, okay, these are the few points just really quickly in a text message. However, again, toward the end of that message, I would say, well, let's go ahead and have a conversation, but here is 1, 2, 3 quick points about what that could be or what that is. But yes, in something like that, in a contract, yeah, the quick phone call, just to explain it.
Or here's the text that I really like. Maybe it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. A client texts you and said, is it okay to call and speak?
Yes.
So you can call them right back and say, it sure is. But it was a politeness there and a respect that I don't want to infringe on your nighttime.
Yes.
You old guy, you might already be asleep.
Yes. Exactly.
By the way, I'm never.
No. So I guess you're not that old then, right?
Exactly.
There you go. But yes, that is something that I certainly, and that's actually a way to overcome a lot of these barriers in communication is, like you said, just sending that quick message, hey, and even if from the client or the agent to the client, you know, just saying, hey, let me go ahead before I give you a call, because I know you prefer texting, but let me text them and say, is it okay if I give you a call at XYZ and you know, this time, give them maybe a few different times. That's something I learned from my manager at RC, Allison. She, you know, that's a quick tip, you know, give them a few different times to go by instead of just one time. You know, hey, can I give you a call at 2? Well, can I give you a call at 1 or 3?
Yeah.
So,
or is 3 better?
or
Yeah.
is 3 better? Yes, absolutely. It shows respect. It gives you an opportunity to really give them that chance, because then now they feel like they're a little bit more in control of the situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, just checking for that understanding by texting first before we move on to the call.
So we have a new barrier out there, and I'm going to call it Facebook, Instagram, the social media.
Yes.
People can put out the wrong message.
Yes. Absolutely. That social media to me is very much a business. I look at it that way because it allows me to stay professional. It allows me to really think about what I put out before I do. And I think that's if you can think about it that way, then it may look like a personal page, or something that, let's say it is a real estate page. It still gives you that pause to say, hey, is this going to be the right message? Is this the right thing to put out? So that's important to me when it comes to social media as well.
I gave advice to a younger agent a few years back. I said, I saw on your Facebook page last night that during the middle of the day you were out by the pool drinking. I said, what message are you sending to your clients?
Absolutely.
Is a weekday. I mean, it was a work day.
Yeah.
You're telling them you're not working.
Yeah, and it's absolutely okay for you to be young and fun. However, I think with where we are, and especially in this industry, yes, I think of all of this as a business. To me, that's the first thing when I think social media. It's that opportunity to be professional.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Here's another one that you see an agent post on there. Oh, what a day I had, or what a week. I've put 3 escrows in, taken 4 listings, done this, done that.
Yes.
You got to be careful. You might also be telling people you're too busy for them.
Ah, that's a good one. Yes, we do want to have reviews, and we want people to make sure that we know we're working and we're doing something. But I didn't think about that. That's a good one right there. Now you're saying that, well, I'm too busy to handle more. But again, it's good to show your accomplishments. It's good to show what you're doing. But let's put it in a more professional and positive light, rather than maybe it came across a little bit negative, and that's why it could look like you're complaining about your day rather than celebrating the good things that you're doing.
Right. And the problem with communication where you're not in person is you don't have the ability to respond quickly with a correction. It's like, no, I didn't really mean that I'm that busy.
Yes.
I'm never too busy for you, a new client, or I'm never too busy for whatever. So,
absolutely.
All right. So, last question I have for you, and thank you for coming here today. This has been fun and informative. The human element. How do we keep the human element present and vital in today's communications?
I think just thinking about each other continuously, not just thinking of, like I said, understanding oneself, but really putting effort and thought into the other person, and that's how we would keep that human element alive in a virtual world that we live in.
Well, thank you, melkleinveldtlewis of Realty Concepts. That last one is the advice that I'm going to learn from for today. Thinking about each other.
Yes.
So we have to think of the other in communication.
Absolutely.
And with that, I want to thank all our listeners for tuning in today to Welcome Home Radio. I hope you had as much fun as we did. Thank you.